Okay. Hey everybody. So I moved the camera. I also discovered that the earbuds that I've been using as a microphone aren't actually working as a microphone. So hopefully me talking will work well enough. I guess yell at me in the chat if I'm not loud enough. Uh, So today we're going to be making some chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to try to walk you through the process of the cookies. Um, I like to say that I've been baking since I could stand up to the counter, so there's a lot that I don't really have to think about. So I'm just going to do my best to explain how I do it and yell at me in the chat if you have any questions. After I'm done with the stream, I'm gonna upload the video to YouTube, and in the YouTube description, the video description, I'll be able to put the actual recipe for the cookies. Um, so yeah, we're gonna make some cookies. It's gonna be great. So the recipe that I'm using is out of Mrs. Field's best cookie book ever. I've had this cookie book for most of my life. It actually used to be my mom's cookbook. It has her name in it. Um, And if you can find a copy of this cookie book somewhere, it's the bomb diggity. There's so much good stuff in here. And like a lot of the time, I'll tweak recipes to do more of what I want them to do. Uh, but for the most part, everything in here is golden. Um, so I am using a stand mixer because I have one, but I know that not everybody does. Like this recipe will, it's chocolate chip cookies, so like even if you just have a regular like hand mixer, it's going to be totally fine. You'll just have to work a little bit harder. uh so the first thing I'm gonna do is I forgot to get out a bowl, so I need to get out one more bowl. All right, so we've got a large bowl, and I also have a sieve or a sifter. Um, I really like my chocolate chip cookies to be very like fluffy and soft and almost kind of cakey. So the best way to achieve that is to make sure that you incorporate air into every step that you can do so. So the first place that you can incorporate some extra air is going to be sifting your flour, so that it just kind of fluffs it up a little bit, and it just gives it that much more like non-chemical leavening basically. So we need 2.5 cups of flour. Another thing that bakers will tell you is that you don't want to like shove your measuring cup like all the way in, and because that compresses down the flour and makes it so that you're basically like, a lot of bakers say that you should measure flour and dry goods based not on the volume of a cup, but actually by the weight, because it's just more precise. I pretty much only do that for bread. Um, Otherwise, I'm just kind of lazy about it, and I will, like, I'm not going to shove the cup straight down. I'll hold the container of flour sideways and scoop it. That way it doesn't compress it quite as much. Alright, so we got 2.5 cups of flour, and we need half a teaspoon of baking soda. My baking soda is almost empty, but I will not waste half a teaspoon. There is technically a difference between baking soda and baking powder. I am not Alton Brown, so I could not tell you the difference. Just, before you start baking, make sure that you have read the recipe and know what you're doing. Reading the recipe all the way through beforehand will help a lot with not having issues later on. So that's all the dry ingredients, and we're just gonna sift that all together into the bowl. Let me go ahead and, sorry if it's a shaky. There we go. And like I said, this just incorporates some extra air into the flour so that it just helps fluff up the cookies later on. There's a couple other things we're gonna do that also help make the cookies really soft and fluffy. All right, so there's the flour. And I'm gonna set this bowl back here by my laptop so it's out of the way. And next, we've got some butter. This has been sitting out for a little bit, but it's still not quite as soft as it needs to be. So I'm gonna be putting it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. That is going to soften up the butter without completely melting it, which is another thing that I do to make sure that my cookies come out really fluffy. If you melt the butter all the way, so it's just, liquid, and then you put that in your cookies, that's not necessarily wrong. That's just gonna make your cookies a lot more flat and chewy versus the soft and fluffy way that I like them. So this is going in the microwave. I'll be right back. Also important for baking, make sure you stay hydrated. Excellent. So this is about where you want the butter to be. You can see there's a little bit of meltage down here, but mostly it's just really soft. So we are gonna take a rubber spatula and scoop that into the bowl of the stand mixer. Once again, if you don't have a stand mixer, you can make this just fine with just a regular hand mixer. For an additional, there's a couple different attachments that you can use for the stand mixer. For the initial creaming of the butter and sugar, I like to use the whisk attachment because again, it's a whisk. It's gonna incorporate even more air into this part of the dough. There we go. This probably doesn't sound very good, and I'm very sorry about that. So yeah, we're just gonna let that go for a little while so it can incorporate air into the butter, and make it just extra creamy and super soft. Sorry about that. So here's what it looks like so far. It has been super like smoothed out. It's starting to fluff up a little bit, but mostly it's just really smooth and creamy looking. At this step, we could let the mixer continue beating air just into the butter, but because you probably don't want to listen the to the stand mixer, um, do that for like 10 minutes, we're gonna move on to the adding sugar. There we go. So, for sugar, we need half a cup of regular white granulated sugar. And we need 1 cup of brown sugar. The recipe that I have calls for dark brown sugar. The only difference between dark brown sugar and light brown sugar is that dark brown sugar has more molasses mixed in, so that's what makes it like clumpy and stick together. It also just gives it like a stronger molassesy flavor, which is part of what gives the brown sugar in the brown sugar is what gives chocolate chip cookies its like signature like golden brown color. Personally, I can't really tell the difference between chocolate chip cookies made with dark brown sugar and made with light brown sugar. I usually just keep light brown sugar around the house. And also, not all recipes say it, but usually if something says brown sugar, you want to pack the brown sugar into the cup so that it's pretty dense. So you just scoop it and press it until, there, see? Super flat, just packed on in there. You just, I am not going to have quite enough brown sugar in this bag, but I do have another bag of brown sugar in the pantry, so I will be right back. See, if I didn't pack it down, this would be enough brown sugar, just about, but since you need to pack it, it's not. So I'll be right back. Brown sugar. Hi, Hello Buffalo. Alright. Okay. Nice and packed. Drop that back in there. So now we have half a cup of white sugar and 1 full cup of brown sugar. So we're gonna turn this back on. Again, I'm very sorry about the noise. There's nothing I can do about it. So this is already pretty fluffy. I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl because there's definitely some sugar stuck up on the side. You want to make sure anything on the bottom is also getting incorporated well. So do that and then let it mix for just a little bit longer. pretty fancy looking, or pretty fluffy looking. Let me scrape some of this off. So part of why you want to beat it so much when it's just at the like butter, sugar, eggs phase is because once you add flour to this, like you can, if you overmix it, it will come out being, the cookies will be kind of tough. Hold on, what is this? Once you start beating the flour into it, if you overmix it, it will build up gluten. And gluten is what makes like bread chewy and good. But you don't really want cookies or like cake to build up a lot of gluten because it will make it chewy, but it'll also make it tough. So you want to beat in as much, you want to do as much beating as you can when it's just the butter sugar flour or the butter sugar eggs. Anyway, so this is what it looks like when it's nice and fluffy with just the butter and the sugar mixed in. The next thing we're gonna do is add the eggs. A lot of chefs will tell you to crack your eggs into a separate container and pour them in one at a time because there's the chance that you could like crack an egg open and it'll be bad. And then if you mix a bad egg into your, into your stuff, then that will also be bad and you'll have to start all over again. I've been baking for 29 years and I've never cracked a bad egg into something that I've been baking. So technically you should do that, but like, I'll start doing that when I crack an egg open and it's gone bad. At this point, you can also add in your vanilla flavoring, which this recipe calls for 2 teaspoons. Not all vanilla extracts are equal. This is the cheap, like, imitation vanilla that you get from Target. And, like, it's a vanilla-y. It's definitely fake vanilla, but it's vanilla-y. But, like, real vanilla is expensive as shit because it's grown in Madagascar and it's going extinct because humans are terrible. Anyway, this is going to be turned back on for a little bit. Again, I'm sorry about the noise. This is looking real fluffy. I'm gonna scrape down the sides again because I can see some like egg and yolky bits stuck on the side. Yet again, you want to make sure that you're getting all the stuff that's also on the bottom of the bowl so that everything is nice and incorporated. So I'm gonna do that and then let it mix for just a little bit longer. So this is now super fluffy. So that is all of the wet ingredients. I could not tell you exactly why sugar counts as a wet ingredient when it comes to baking. It just incorporates much better into the wet ingredients than into the dry. I have some old recipes that my mom wrote down where it's literally just like, mix the dry ingredients, mix the wet ingredients, combine. And if you don't know what that means, you're gonna have a bad time. Alright, so we're done with the whisk. While this guy was going, I turned the oven on and it is heating up to 350. 350 is the standard temperature for most like sweet baking. I watched a video once that talked about why 350 is the magic number, and it has something to do with like caramelizing all of the good sugar that's in the baked good that you're making. But again, I don't remember exactly what. So this is what it looks like. It's very fluffy. It's got a lot of body to it. One of the reasons eggs are important for baking is because they add a lot of structure to what you're baking. And that's important so that it doesn't just like fall apart. Alright, so there's that guy. So now we're going to the paddle attachment for mixing in all the dry ingredients. Like I said earlier, when it comes to mixing in the flour, you don't want to overmix it. If you overmix it, then the cookies will come out being like, not the good kind of chewy, but like the tough kind of chewy. So, we're gonna attach this guy. And here's the flour we mixed up earlier. The other thing, when it comes to mixing your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients, is if you do it all at once and then you start mixing, you're gonna get like a big plume of flour coming out. So instead, we're gonna mix it in about a cup at a time, and we're gonna mix it on low. It would help if there we go. So we're going to let that run until that flour is almost completely incorporated, and then we're going to put in another scoop right now. And then we're going to let that go until it's incorporated. Which is about right now. And there's only a little bit left in here, and it's not going to scoop well, so we're just going to go ahead and pour that in. And we're also going to add in all the chocolate chips. A lot of recipes, like fancier chocolate chip recipes, want you to like get a bar of chocolate and like chunk it up yourself, which is really good, but like it's chocolate chips, dude. You don't got to make it extra fancy. So we're going to go ahead and pour those in. And then again, we're going to mix it on low just until everything is incorporated. Excellent. All right, then we're going to go ahead and get everything off of the paddle attachment, as much as we can anyway. All right. Go ahead and scrape all of this off. It's much easier when you have, well, I don't want to say it's much easier. It's much easier to get all the stuff off when you're using just a traditional hand mixer, because then you just got to do the thing where you hold it until it all spins off. Though I suppose if my only complaint about the stand mixer is that I have to do this myself, like, it's pretty good. I do really like having a stand mixer, especially with the holidays coming up. I'm going to do so much baking. I'll do a couple I'll make sure I do some holiday baking videos. I'm going to start my holiday baking like the first week of December. So, alright, see, just get as much off as you can. And then you don't want to overmix the dough, but it's important to give it just a couple of folds to make sure you got everything like off the bottom of the bowl. I've definitely ran into the problem of like catching just a secret pocket of just butter or a secret pocket of just flour, and then you're sad. All right, that is beautiful. Beautiful cookie dough. So the other thing that I do that I think really helps with like the fluffy texture of my chocolate chip cookies is once I get to this point, I will refrigerate the dough for about an hour. What I feel like that does is it stiffens up the dough so that when I put it in the oven, it still really holds its shape. And it just doesn't spread out, it just stays tall and fluffy. And then, as Binging with Babish would say, it also helps the flavors get to know each other. It's kind of like a marinating of the dough, so that like all of the brown sugarness and all of the vanilla and all the good stuff in here can just kind of incorporate into itself better. I don't want to pause the stream for an hour while I do that, and I don't want to just like have you watch me clean up the kitchen. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to separate out half of this dough and then put the other half in the fridge while I'm baking the first half. And then we can compare what the two cookies look and feel like, and see what we like better. Like I said earlier, if you prefer your cookies to be more like thin and chewy, that's when you're gonna melt all the butter so it's completely liquid, and then basically follow the rest of these directions without worrying about the dough being like extra fluffy. So I'm gonna get some stuff out of the way really quick. That was the oven. So we're going to take about half of this dough and cover it and put it in the fridge. When you refrigerate your dough, don't just cover the top of the bowl. Make sure that you're putting your saran wrap or whatever all the way against the dough. Otherwise, that part of the dough will get dried out and be kind of gross. So we're going to put this in the fridge for as long as it takes to bake this other stuff. Sheet. Parchment paper. There. Get it nice and even. Sorry, give me a second. Now when I bought it, it was called a cookie scoop. It doesn't always work super well. I think I need to get either a new one or a different brand. So we're just gonna go ahead and use a spoon. So first we're gonna get some of this off of here. It's been so long since I baked this style of cookie dough without refrigerating at first. I'm actually really excited to see how it turns out. And also, first we're gonna taste test this dough. Yep, that's chocolate chip cookie dough. Always make sure you wash your hands after you put your finger in your mouth. Okay, so another thing that I prefer in my cookies is I usually like to make them a little bit smaller because I like them smaller because then I get to feel like I can eat more of them without feeling bad. And also I have more cookies to give away to other people. Um, I give away a lot of baked goods because I like to bake, but I don't need to eat everything myself. So take whatever spoon. This is a regular kitchen eating spoon. And just yeah, and then especially on the first batch of cookies that goes into the oven, I give the cookies a lot of space just to make sure that once they bake, they have plenty of space to spread out if they decide to do something weird. Because that just happens sometimes. Sometimes things just look weird. So, and especially since I haven't refrigerated this dough, I don't know how much it's going to spread out. So on this size pan with this size cookies, I'm only going to put about 6 on here. And then we'll see how they turn out. And these are all approximately the same size, all vaguely round. So they should come out being pretty good looking cookies. That's about right. So I said that I use the Mrs. Fields Best Cookie Book Ever for a lot of my recipes. The only thing I don't really like about this cookbook is that most of the time it says to bake everything at rather than 350, just at 300 and bake it for 20 minutes. Which I don't know about you, I don't want to wait for 20 minutes for 6 cookies to bake. So I set it to 350 and then I start checking on the cookies after about 12 minutes. So give me just a sec. So here we've got our 6 cookies that are going to go into the oven. I will always only bake 1 pan at a time, and you always want the oven rack to be in the very middle of the oven. I do this to make sure that everything is getting cooked evenly. If you want to bake 2 trays of cookies at a time, but you only have room for 1 tray per rack, what you're gonna need to do is halfway through the baking time, switch the 2 cookie sheets so they're moved to the opposite layer. Otherwise, the cookies that are on the top are gonna get more cooked on the top than the bottom, and the cookies on the bottom, excuse me, might get burnt on the bottom of the cookie but then be underdone on the top. Another thing chefs will say is to, even when you do just have 1 tray of cookies in the oven at a time, you should turn the cookie sheet around halfway through the baking, because the back of the oven is a lot of the time warmer than the front of the oven. So if you don't flip them around, they will still cook unevenly. I haven't run into that problem noticeably, so most of the time I don't worry about that. Um, so to reiterate, make sure your rack is in the middle of the oven and that you are cooking one tray at a time unless you make sure to like flip the two racks halfway through. Um, the waiting time for the oven is a great time to start straightening up the kitchen. I'm gonna get some stuff thrown in the trash and then I'm gonna start getting stuff ready for the next tray of cookies to go in the oven. It is important to keep your cooking area clean. Um, One thing that I'll usually while the cookie dough is refrigerating, I will get the kitchen cleaned up. Um, don't like having a dirty kitchen, especially not when I use the kitchen so much. I got this great tray thing from the dollar section at Target a while ago. It's supposed to be, it's sold for like classroom organization, but since I have a really big pantry, it's really convenient to have because then I can just load it up out of stuff from the pantry and then carry it out here. Another thing that it's important to have are cooling racks. Most of the time, you want to move your cookies from a cooling rack, like from the tray to the cooling rack, like immediately. The longer you keep it on the tray, it's gonna keep cooking for a little bit because of the residual heat, like in the tray, because of how long it was in the oven. Um, and even the cookies themselves will keep cooking a little bit longer after you pull them out because they're still hot and they're going to be cooling down. So if you pull them out of the oven when they are like completely like cooked through, you're going to end up with overcooked hard cookies. So pull them out when they're a little bit soft, put them onto your cooling rack, and then you can start the process over again with more cookies. Usually I put the cooling rack basically behind where the camera is right now, but that wouldn't be very good filmmaking. So instead, I'm gonna put it over there next to the laptop, and then I can still show you what I'm doing a little bit. There is 7 minutes left on the cookies. This dough sure does look like cookie dough. Let's see. Another thing that chefs will say, or at least one of the chefs that I follow, is that even if you're not refrigerating your dough, you should let it sit out on the counter for like half an hour because that helps like hydrate all the flour. I haven't really done that before. Well, I guess more accurately, I did it once when I followed one of his recipes like to the letter. And that recipe was already really different from how I usually make cookies, so I couldn't really tell a difference. The thing about baking is that it's pretty much equal parts like science and art. I would say that like regular cooking leans more to the art side, but there is still science involved. Baking is very like chemistry based. So it's all about the interactions from the different like the different chemicals and how you apply heat to it and what it does and all that kind of thing. But there's also like always room for experimentation. Uh, like the way that I prefer my cookies to be fluffy versus somebody else might want them like chewier and just all that kind of thing. So, like, when you're first learning how to bake, you want to follow your recipes that you have to the letter until you understand why they're like that. And then once you have some confidence, you can start going, okay, but what if I make it this way? What if I melt the butter? What if I add what if I add something other than vanilla flavoring? What happens if I crunch up pretzels and mix them in? Uh, what if I use an egg replacer? Just there's all kinds of stuff you can do to make your cookies the way that you want them to be. The first step is just understanding like the process of baking. And like I said earlier, I'm not Alton Brown, so I can't tell you the science of why things work the way that they do. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna do some research, but for this first video, the best I can do is to tell you to know what you're doing before you experiment and how to make your cookies fluffy. That's all I got. Uh, if there is a specific kind of cookie or baked good you would like to learn how to make, you can yell at me in the chat, or since there's nobody here right now, once I upload this to YouTube, comment on what you want to see me bake. I mostly most of my experience with baking is with cookies, but I'm always willing to experiment. Um, and maybe it would be good for you guys to see me fuck up making a cake. Who knows? Uh, I'm not hosting Thanksgiving at my house this year because there's a plague happening, but one of my friends is hosting a little gathering. So I'm probably going to make a pie to bring to that. Um, so I guess you guys could watch me make a pie. We'll see if I can make my own goddamn pie crust this year. Pie crust is the one of the few things that I have a terrible time trying to put together because it's always like they say it should be really easy because you just make sure you're using cold butter, make sure it's in super small pieces, make sure everything stays chill, and use as little water as possible to mix everything together. But like I just can't get it to come together. Like I'll be like, okay, I have used the minimum amount of the minimum amount of water, and it's just holding together, and that's what all of the chefs on the internet say to do, till it just holds together. And then I'll try to then I'll refrigerate it and then try to roll it out, and then it just falls apart. And I just don't understand. And it's made extra complicated by the fact that, like, I can't buy most grocery store pie crusts because most of them use lard, and my husband is Jewish, and lard is pig fat, so I can't use that. And one of the lesser known kosher rules is not mixing meat and dairy at the same time. So if I am, for instance, making turkey for Thanksgiving, and we want to follow up with some, say, pecan pie, in the pie crust there would be butter, like regular ass butter, and that's not going to work because we just had turkey. So I need to learn how to make pie crust with vegetable shortening, but that's not working very well either because it doesn't go quite the even when you refrigerate vegetable shortening, it doesn't get as solid as butter does. So I'm just having a hard time like evening that out. So like if I want to make pie crust while my husband is home for the holidays or whatever, I have to like either make vegetarian dinner for the holidays or I have to drive all the way out to fucking Whole Foods or something, which I don't want to shop at because Amazon owns Whole Foods, and buy some like vegan pie crust out there, and it's a pain. So I need to learn how to make my own pie crust, but it's hard. So again, even though I'm good at baking, there's some stuff I'm just not good at yet. I forgot to set up the next tray. which I guess isn't really a problem because I still need to see how those cookies are spreading, but I don't want to open up the oven because that lets hot air out and makes it take longer for everything to bake. When I was a kid baking, I didn't use parchment paper. I really only discovered it like as an adult when I had to move back in with my parents for a while. But it's really handy because it makes it so that when you're scooping your cookies off your pan, they come right off. You don't have to worry about messing them up. Oh heck. Alright, that's fine. 7 seconds left on these. Okay. So, here's what they look like so far. Around the edges, they are pretty golden looking. The tops look a little bit less done than I would like though. And also, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but these ones look more done. The ones on this side look more done than the one on this side. And that's probably because these were the ones facing the back of the oven. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put these back in the oven for about 2 minutes, but have them facing the opposite direction. Personally, I can already tell that cooking them without refrigerating them first does make a big difference. They definitely look a lot more flat than my refrigerated cookies usually do. But they're not, let's see. I probably could have put them a little bit closer together, but not really enough to fit more on that pan. So 6 cookies for that size pan will be good. On this size pan, I'll probably do 8. And I will show you how I achieve that. I've got like a really huge cookie sheet that I love to use for cookies, because I can fit like 14 cookies on it at a time. Sometimes you realize after you've put a glob of cookie dough on the sheet that you made it a little bit too big. Don't feel bad about scooping just a little bit off and also moving the glob of cookie dough around to make more room. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm putting these cookies on here a little bit offset, which helps make a little bit more room on the tray to add more cookies, which is a good trick for when the tray is just a little bit smaller than you want it to be. There we go. Excellent. So, all right. So, yeah, these cookies are nice and browned around the edges. The tops are still really pale, but I can tell that once I let them sit for a while, they will be cooked through really well. Here we go. There we go. There. All right. So now, there. The cookie tray, the cooling rack that I have is over there by the laptop. Another really important tool for baking is a metal spatula because it's much thinner than a regular like plastic spatula, so it's much easier to get it underneath the cookies without it like destroying the cookie. And actually, these cookies look like they might be a little bit overcooked. So in the next batch I put into the oven, I'm going to start with 10 minutes because the first time I put it in for 12. No, yeah, 12. Start with 10 minutes and then I'll check on it. Since those look like they cooked a little bit unevenly, I will, after 5 minutes, go in and flip the cookie sheet around to try to make sure it's doing well. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. That is too close together. Alright, so with this batch, I offset the cookies a little bit so that it's kind of zigzagged, which will give them just a little bit more room to spread out, and then I can pack more cookies onto one tray without them running into each other. I'm a little bit concerned that these ones might still be too close together, but I guess we'll see when it comes out of the oven, and then you guys can see me fuck something up. We're learning together. So I'm setting this timer for 10 minutes. After 5 minutes, I'm gonna flip the cookie sheet around. That way the cookies at the front of the oven get cooked at the same heat as the cookies in the back of the oven. So another weird trick that I have, excuse me, is that when you take your cookie sheet out of the oven, you can't put the next batch of cookie dough on it. Excuse me, you can't put the next batch of cookie dough on it immediately because it's still hot and the cookie dough will melt and it will not cook evenly when you put it in the oven. So what I do is I take the still hot cookie sheet and I just wave it around. And that helps cool it off faster, the same way that blowing on your food cools it off. Just makes the air flow over it faster. So just wave it around until it's cool enough to touch. And then when you put your cookie dough on it for the next batch, it won't get all melty and weird. My husband teases me about it because he likes to joke that I'm just doing magic spells. But no, it's just science. You just cool it off. But I'm also still not gonna put the next globs of cookie dough on here until the timer gets to 5 minutes. probably couldn't hear me. I'm glad you can hear me because I don't have a fancy camera set up or mic set up, I guess. I'm just using my phone. Yeah, we're making chocolate chip cookies today. I already have some cookies out of the oven, which I will show you. Here's some of the cookies. I'm doing a little bit of an experiment because most of the time when I make my chocolate chip cookies, I will refrigerate the dough for about an hour before I start baking because it just gives the cookies a better texture. But I didn't want to stop the stream for an hour while I waited for the cookie dough to harden up, I guess. So this half of the cookie dough was not refrigerated, and then I have another half of cookie dough waiting in the fridge for me to bake. One sec. That was me turning the baking tray around so that the cookies cook evenly. I'll move this over here. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks. One of my friends got that for me, or more accurately for my husband, for Christmas a couple years ago. Right now he's holding up my sourdough bread recipe. Personally, I haven't played Undertale. My husband tried to get me to play Undertale, but it just, like, it's definitely an objectively good game. It's just hard for me to get into games sometimes. Like, I love video games, but I guess certain video games. So how's your day going? I would say that this recipe probably makes like 24 cookies. They're about. Once they're all done, I'll probably take some to some of my friends because, like, goodness knows I don't need to eat 24 cookies myself. Alright. So that's it for the unrefrigerated dough. Let me even this out a little bit. I would definitely send these cookies to you if I could. particular about my cookies all being like the same shape and stuff. Yeah, I am currently living in Florida. Um, I'm not from here originally, but it's where I'm stuck at. Uh, just a little bit more time left on the oven. I'm gonna grab. Yeah, originally I'm from Washington State, and it's really funny because when you talk about accents, most Washingtonians don't believe that they have an accent, but studies have shown that the Washingtonian accent is just talking really fast, which is super funny to me. Okay. So these cookies are still a little bit underdone, so I'm gonna pop them back in for another like 2 minutes and see how they look after that. You can always like uh, um, something can if something is undercooked, you can always fix that. But if something is overcooked, there's nothing you can do about it. So just always check on what you're doing and like see what it's doing. Uh, I am baking at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, I will Google really quick and find out what that is in Celsius because I'm an American and I don't know off the top of my head. Okay, so that is 176 degrees Celsius. 30 seconds. Yeah, it does also depend on the oven. I don't have another like thermometer in the oven right now, mostly because this is a pretty new oven, so I trust it to be what it says it is. Um, I do have a thermometer in my fridge because the fridge is also new, but its temperatures are weird sometimes. All right, so these look more done than they did before. They are a little bit more golden brown on top, and they have a lot more like even golden brown color around the edges. So I'm gonna take these over to my cooling rack and scoop them on off. I'm out of room on that cooling rack. Luckily, I have a lot. fact, I have so many cooling racks that I'm actually using one right now to hold up my PS4 so that it doesn't overheat, which is working really well. My PS4 gave me a scare a few weeks ago. I turned it on and it, like, gave me like a staticky screen and just totally glitched out, and I was like, no! I had to talk to one of my, like, technology wizard friends to talk me through trying to get it to work again. Luckily, it was fine. And now I put it on a cooling rack to make sure it doesn't overheat. Though I guess if it had died, then that would have been a great excuse to get a PS5 when they come out. But then I wouldn't have been able to start streaming. I would say it's just a hobby slash passion. I like to say that I've been cooking since I could stand up to the counter. So like it's just a lot of fun for me. I have, like, friends and family have always asked why I haven't pursued cooking or baking as a career path. And part of it is because I don't think I really have the temperament for a professional kitchen. Like, I worked at Starbucks for a couple of years and it gave me so much anxiety, and it's just like, God, customers are the worst, you know? I just don't have the temperament for it. And like, I'm sure working at just a regular bakery would be less stressful than like a proper restaurant kitchen, but I'm afraid that if I like monetize this hobby in that way, then I would be less passionate about it, because then it just becomes my job. Once we don't have to worry about the coronavirus anymore, or at least not quite as much, I am gonna try to like have a stall at like the local farmers market for baking. Because I do a lot of cookies, but I've also like, I did the millennial thing, and I learned how to make sourdough bread while in quarantine, which has been a lot of fun. I'm gonna do some sourdough later this week. Yeah, it's just like, I'm on. Let's overshare with the internet for a minute. I'm already on antidepressants for depression and anxiety. Like, working at Starbucks was too much of a mental load for me. And also, I'm probably on the autistic spectrum, so it's just too much. I'll just bake at home. All right, so this is the cookie dough that I refrigerated. And now we will get to see the difference between cookie dough that you bake without refrigerating and cookie dough that you do refrigerate. It comes out a lot more stiff, and it holds its shape better in the oven, and so it helps the cookies stay really fluffy, which is the way that I like my cookies. A lot of people want their chocolate chip cookies to be really like thin and chewy, which is not necessarily incorrect. It's just not what I want from a cookie. I have like a family recipe for snickerdoodles that also come out really soft and cakey. And so whenever I see snickerdoodles at the grocery store that are basically just like a thin, chewy sugar cookie covered in cinnamon and sugar, I'm like personally offended. If I could open like my own bakery, that might be really fun. But this is not the economy for opening up like a small business. Especially since like I don't think that I would make money with it. Because I don't have a head for business. My husband's really good at math. So like he'd be able to help me with all the budgeting and stuff. But none of us really have any like business experience. So I still don't think it would be a great idea. I guess if I could get a job at a bakery, just like being the person who shows up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to really like start making bread, like that would be pretty rad. I just don't want to talk to customers. Customers are the devil. Keep that cold. Muffins are good. I actually have some bananas that are looking kind of sad, so I'm probably gonna make I have some bananas that are looking kind of sad, so I'm probably gonna make some banana nut muffins later this week, or maybe some banana bread. I haven't decided yet. That is a great plan. Um, I guess I'll see how doing the farmer's market stall works out. I think with the farmer's market stall, I'll probably focus on the cookies. The last time I was there at the farmer's market, there's already a couple of like baker stalls there, but one of them is more like vegan baking and the other one focuses on bread. So I think that like my variety of cookies would probably be a good addition. I might also sell some sourdough because like the sourdough from the one stall always sells out. Excuse me. Sometimes I don't get there early enough, or at least when I was going to the farmer's market regularly before I learned how to make my own sourdough, if I didn't get there early enough, she would already be out of sourdough. So, but I live in the south of the United States where science is a debate. So I don't want to be in public very much because all of these stupid fucking southerners just don't wear a mask. And I don't want to deal with the Rona. I already feel like I've been not as careful as I should be. I had a couple of my friends come over on election night because I had so much anxiety. Um, and we hung out in my house and like didn't wear masks. So now all of us are like a little bit on edge, making sure that none of us start showing symptoms. Well, uh, corona wise, some places are seeing an uptick in cases. Um, some places are trying to shut down again, which I think is a great idea since we never really shut down properly in the first place. Politically wise, Trump lost the election. Like, praise the fucking Lord. But now we have to deal with another 3 months of him throwing a tantrum and trying to destroy America before Biden takes office. Because that's just how narcissists work. So it is what it is. Even if we can't get Trump to leave office, or to leave the White House once his term is up, like Biden will still legally be the president. So we'll see how that turns out. Um, yeah, corona wise, I'm pretty sure there's been an uptick in cases lately. Um, so I leave the house like once a week to go to the grocery store, and if I have too much anxiety, I'll just order groceries instead. Um, I have a couple of friends that I'll go see semi-regularly, but usually when we hang out, we'll either hang out exclusively outside or we'll wear masks the whole time. Yeah, I don't like Trump. I Part of me understands why he got elected in the first place, and it's just because Republicans are good at one thing, and that's lying. So they were able to just lie their way into office and convince like working class people that even though he's like a child emperor, that he was going to work for the people and stuff. Um, and like, not that like Biden's not really a whole lot better. He's just not quite as like outwardly a fascist. Um, but I think once Biden properly takes, sorry, my cats are playing with something. Once Biden properly takes office, the thing that I think we have to worry about the most is all of the liberals just suddenly not caring about like the plights of the oppressed people of the United States and all of the bullshit imperialism that the United States does in other countries. Because like Trump's out of office, all the problems are gone now. But that's not how it works. Like, if the last 4 years have taught us anything, it should be that our system is completely broken. Like, everything needs to get overhauled. Biden, by all rights, like he shouldn't have been the one to get the nomination. Like, we all wanted Bernie. Um, But even if Bernie got the presidency, like we would still need to fix all the problems. It's just that I think Bernie is he's just more left leaning than Biden is. So I would have trusted him more to actually like make a real effort to fix things. Um, but we're not here to talk about politics. We're here to bake. So. These cookies will be out of the oven in just a minute, and then we can put these ones in. And this is the cookie dough that had been refrigerated for a while, so we will see the difference in like how they come out of the oven versus the ones that weren't refrigerated. Eh. Sorry, my mitt got stuck. I'm not a very good. Hold on, I gotta scoop these cookies. There we go. All right. I would say that I'm not a very good like standard view. I would say I'm not a very good standard view for what like the average American lives like. I wouldn't say that we're like rich or anything, but I am very privileged. Um, I don't have to worry about rent money. Like my husband and I bought a house. Like we're doing okay. My sister, on the other hand, is not. So like there's just a lot. It's just a lot. Um, all right. So the next batch of cookies is in the oven. After the timer, let's see. I have it set for 6 minutes, and then I'm gonna turn the cookie sheet around. That way, all the cookies get cooked evenly in the oven. Once I flip the cookie dough around, I will start the next batch of cookies on the pan. Um, yeah. So, what country are you in? Um, I don't think my oven has a fan, so I don't worry about that. Or if it does, it just goes automatically. Um, Yeah, I don't think my oven has a fan, so I just turn it to the temperature and it goes. Or if it does have a fan, I don't have an option to mess with it, I guess. Um, Sometimes I run out of things to talk about, so I'm gonna go get one of my cats and show him off because he's perfect. My perfect boy. Let's introduce you to the internet. Oh, you got it. This is Peanut. He's my perfect boy. I rescued him from the road outside of the Starbucks I used to work at when he was a tiny kitten like this big. And now he's a full-grown boy. I have another cat, but she doesn't like to be picked up, so I can't really carry her in here. But she's like, I don't want to say she's twice Peanut size, she's just a big chonk. She's real fat. Oh, there she is. Come here, Kit Kat. This is my other cat. She doesn't like to be picked up. I'm gonna put her down. um, Someday I want to learn how to make cat treats. I've made dog treats before, and those are really easy because usually it's just like all-purpose flour, peanut butter, shredded carrots, and then you're good to go. Making cat treats usually involves like baking canned tuna, and I just feel like that wouldn't make my house smell very good. Plus, you can just get like good cat treats elsewhere. Thanks for hanging out with me. Sorry if I'm boring. So other than Undertale, what video games do you like? Uh, that's fair. Um, I'm not working a traditional job right now, so I have a lot of free time. I've been playing a lot of. Those are not quite done yet. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Shield, which has been really fun. I didn't expect to like it as much because there was just so much hold on, let me fix this camera a little bit. There we go. There was just so much like controversy, I guess, around Pokemon Sword and Shield when it was coming out, and I definitely would not describe myself as a Gen 1 purist or anything. I have access to every single generation of Pokemon, and all of them have their pros and cons. The problem that I have with some of the more recent generations is that, especially when it comes to the final evolutions of the starters, they don't look like Pokemon anymore. They look like mascots. Like, if you go back to like the first, I would say 2 or 3 gens, um, even 4 gens actually, most of the earlier generations, all of the final evolutions of the starters look like monsters that you would find out in the forest or wherever their native habitat would be. But then you look at like whatever the final evolution of Score Bunny is, and it's just like, that's just a mascot. That's just a furry. I have never played Warzone, but I'm glad that you are enjoying it for your weekend. Need to fix my bandana. My hair is too long. But yeah, so I'm a big Pokemon fan. Um, I've been playing that a lot, and I did pick up Horizon Zero Dawn. Most of the time I end up not playing video games right when they come out. I end up waiting for a while because video games are expensive. So I picked up Horizon Zero Dawn, but I haven't gotten very far in it yet because I had an itch to play Dragon Age Inquisition again. So I've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition and streaming it, which has been really fun. Um, and I've also been getting the itch to play Fallout 4 again, so I'm going to start streaming that on Thursday. So, I am really excited that BioWare announced that they're re-releasing all the Mass Effect games. I never quite finished that series, so I'm excited to have a new chance to do that with like modern graphics and everything. I kind of like Star Wars. I kind of like Star Wars. I I know that like when The Force Awakens came out, a lot of people didn't like it because it was kind of just a remake of A New Hope. But like I loved what they did with it. The concept of a stormtrooper like defecting away from the Empire was so good, and just all the characters they introduced were incredible, and all that kind of thing. And then starting with whatever they called the second one, I was just kind of ugh. It just wasn't. I just feel like they wasted so much potential, and they focused on fucking Kylo Ren instead of like the deeply interesting character that should have been Finn. Um, but like I also grew up watching the originals, so. And also, I really, really love Rogue One. Rogue One was so good. I haven't watched the prequel trilogy in a really long time, but I also kind of think that as much as they're not really what people wanted out of Star Wars at the time, I think especially nowadays, they just were underappreciated. And also that the best way to watch all of the Star Wars would be to watch episodes 4 and 5, and then once it's revealed that Darth Vader is Luke's father, then watch 1, 2, and 3, so that you can understand what led Anakin Skywalker to become Darth Vader, and then you watch 6. And then I guess if you want to watch all the other ones too, then you go ahead and watch 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, I remember having them on VHS too. I remember we had the special box set of the like updated version that a lot of people didn't like. Man, there's people love Star Wars, but they also love to hate Star Wars, don't they? That's true. Star Wars just has such a big vocal fandom. I feel like they're like, especially with the new trilogy, I know that like the actors that played Poe and Finn and Rose got a lot of just terrible vitriol from the internet from Star Wars fans just basically being racist at them. Um, they just they want their Star Wars to be a specific way, and they don't know how to handle it when it doesn't quite match their vision. It's like they've never like learned how to write fan fiction. If a piece of media that you love does something that pisses you off, just write fan fiction about it. I wrote like basically a novel's worth of fan fiction about Fallout 4 because I didn't like how the Nuka World DLC went. And I thought that I should have been able to convince Porter Gage to stop being a raider because I had reached like the max friendship with him. But I think part of why it doesn't bother me as much. Hold on, the timer's gonna go off. All right. Those cookies are overcooked a little bit. That's my fault. Okay. So, these are the cookies that I refrigerated the dough for a while before baking it. I did overcook them a little bit. They're a little bit more golden brown than I want them to be, but it be like that sometimes. Um, I mean, I'm sure they'll still be good. Uh, there we go. So usually if I'm making a batch of cookies or a double batch of cookies, what I'll do is that most of them are going to be given away to my friends because I don't need to eat all of them and I like to bake for people. And what I'll do is I'll go through all of the cookies and I always give away the cookies that are the prettiest and like the most perfect, and then I keep the ugly ones for myself. Um, and my husband always teases me about it because he's always like, all of your cookies are beautiful and perfect, and I'm just like, it's not that they're gonna taste bad. They're just not as good as I want them to be. They're just not perfect. Um, just, I had a roommate who, like, she baked some cookies to give to one of her coworkers who was leaving, and it drove me up the wall because she just wasn't, like, she wasn't putting even amounts of dough on the tray, and they weren't all, like, the same level of roundness, and they just didn't, like, I'm sure they were still tasty, but they didn't look good. And when you're giving somebody baked goods, the first thing they're gonna see is how they look. And so if you give somebody cookies or food that looks bad, even if it's the most delicious thing that they've ever seen, you're gonna start off with a bad impression. So I just want the cookies to look good. Um, which is why a lot of the time I'll use like a cookie scoop. But the one that I have is old and hasn't been working as well. The cookie dough sticks to the inside too badly, and I don't want to spray it with like non-stick spray or anything because I'm not sure how that will affect the bake of them. Oh, but what I was saying about fan fiction was that like I feel like as someone who grew up like before it became like girls and women have always been part of nerd communities, but up until recently it hasn't really been like culturally acknowledged. So I feel like growing up when I did and playing the video games and watching the movies and TV shows that I did, I grew up being used to not seeing myself in the media I consumed. So when I play video games that have a white dude or whatever as the main character, it doesn't really bother me. Um, and like all of the time that I spent playing Skyrim, for instance, where the main character or the player character has literally like no backstory for being there, that taught me the value of just deciding things about the character that you're playing as, regardless of whether or not that's actually reflected in the game. Um, and then, like, after that, I did a playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, which before this, I had tried to play through New Vegas, but it was hard for me to get into it because, like, there's no backstory here. I just woke up with a bullet in my head. What the fuck's going on? How often do I bake? I bake something probably once a week. Sometimes, like I would say on average, like once a week, I do some baking. Sometimes a little bit more, since this week I'm gonna be doing some kind of banana bread and also some sourdough. But then there's also weeks where I just like don't want to bake anything. Also, welcome my viewers. I'm happy to have you here. Unfortunately we are already almost done with the baking. I have the second to last batch of cookies in the oven right now, and then I have enough cookie dough left for a single cookie. But since I'm trying to do this like baking class thing for one of my friends wants to learn how to bake, she asked me to teach her. So rather than hanging out in person and risking the COVID, I figured I would just start doing a regular like baking stream. So this week we're doing the chocolate chip cookies. I'm not sure yet what I'm gonna do next week. I'm gonna talk to my friend and see if there's anything specific she would want to learn how to make. I'm definitely gonna do yeah, I mean I guess so. Everything you say, there's always gonna be somebody who doesn't like what you have to say. But like it's also important, as much as you need to take things with a grain of salt, it's also important to like, you know, if somebody tells you that you hurt them, you don't get to tell them that you didn't. You need to listen to them and communicate and see where you went wrong. And if it turns out that they're just being a troll or just being kind of butthurt about something, then like that's on them for being a troll. But it's your job to listen to what they have to say and figure out what changes you need to make, if any. No, it's not. Freedom of speech does not protect you from the consequences of saying bad things. What freedom of speech protects you from is you saying bad things about the government and the government like putting you in prison for it. If you like all the people who like do legitimately say terrible racist things, like they have the freedom to say those things, but they're also not free from the consequences of them saying racist terrible things. If they get fired because they called a customer an N-word, uh, or because they advocated for like killing protesters on Facebook and they get fired for that, that's not interfering with their freedom of speech. That's them facing the consequences for saying terrible things, and that's just how life is. Listen, if the secret police wanted to come get me, then they already would have, because I'm not quiet on Facebook about the things that I believe. Um. Dream's going down? What's happening? Oh. You're making it funny. I get it now. It's fine. So I've got enough cookie dough left in this bowl for a single cookie, which is always the funniest thing to me. Like, I definitely don't think that everyone should have the same thoughts and opinions about everything. I just think that we should agree on, like, basic human rights. That sounds like a great place to start. Um, but one thing we can agree on is that cookies are delicious. So at least we have that going for us. No, my husband is a terrible cook. Um, I want to teach him how to cook better. And also, he wants to learn how to cook. That way, he can help take some of the pressure off me to cook all the time. Um, I would describe my husband as a robot learning how to be human. So, he's just generally not good at, like, food. He's not good at remembering to eat. Um, he's not good at cooking. Like, I think baking would be a good place to start. Another minute. Baking would probably be a good place to start with teaching him how to cook, because, like, you have to follow the recipe because it's very science. Like, baking is just delicious chemistry. So, with cooking, like, regular dinner food, there's so much wiggle room in, like, when you're gonna add your spices, or like how long to stir something, or that kind of thing. But with baking, you need to use these ingredients. You need to follow these directions. Like, it's just less science, a little bit less art and more science. No, not really. Um, I I I do basically all the cooking, including doing stuff on the barbecue. Um, it's fine. I miss I don't want to say I miss living with my parents, but I miss living close to my parents, because my dad's an excellent cook, and especially like on the grill. Just he will grill everything he possibly can. He will like smoke a whole turkey for Thanksgiving. Um, but no, my husband can't do anything. Or that's not true. He can do things. He just can't do like home things. I would say that my husband takes care of the like logistics of owning a house, and I take care of the practical stuff of living in the house. He bought me the house, and I have made the house a home. Unfortunately, I do not have any I do not have any chicken. Um, I'm gonna be having chicken for dinner, but right now we got cookies. Uh, um, on Saturday, I'm gonna be doing another cooking stream, but it's gonna be making dinner rather than baking. Um, I'm gonna be making like a creamy turkey soup, which still isn't quite chicken, but it's gonna be amazing. Um, so I guess if you guys want to come hang out while I make a soup on Saturday, you were totally welcome to. Uh, I'll also be able to show off the sourdough that I'm going to make earlier that day. I wish that I could stream making sourdough, but sourdough is like an all day process. Because it just takes so long to like coax the dough together. Uh, it just takes so long to coax the dough together, and then it has to rest in the fridge overnight, and then you bake it in the morning. Um, it's worth it though, because good sourdough is just so fucking good. But I do not eat bacon very often. My husband is Jewish, so when he's not home, I'm able to eat whatever I want, but when he is home, I cook kosher. Which really isn't that hard. And people are always like, "Oh no, you can't have any bacon," but like it's just bacon. It's not a big deal. Um, I mean, bacon's good. There's some things that wouldn't be the same without it, but like I don't know, bacon culture just doesn't really do it for me. I always like to say that. So I worked at Starbucks for a couple of years, and there's always so much like once fall comes around and the pumpkin spice latte comes out, people come out of the woodwork to like make fun of people for enjoying pumpkin spice lattes. And I like to say that the pumpkin spice latte is a feminist issue because men can cover damn near anything in bacon and call it a culinary success, but God forbid women like pumpkin spice lattes. Um, that being said, bacon's good. It's just, if I'm gonna be eating pork, I would rather have like a teriyaki pork loin or something. Okay. So, we did an experiment today, which was what is the difference between uh, not refrigerating your dough before you bake it and refrigerating it before you bake it so that it's chilled. This cookie was not refrigerated, and this cookie was. Um, they appear to be approximately the same height. This one is lighter in color than this one is. I'm not sure if that's because I baked them for different times or what. Um, they feel pretty similar, like softness wise. Let's see what it looks like when I break it open. I would say it has a pretty good crumb, and it's not particularly, has a pretty good crumb. It's not especially airy, but it's also not flat. The last cookie still has 6 minutes on it, but I figured since most of the other ones were done, I could check on it. This is the one that was refrigerated. It's also a little bit darker on the bottom. It might just be that I cooked this one for longer. I'm breaking it open. I can tell that it's a little bit airier than the first one was. I can see more little air bubbles in it. It's still got a really good crumb and everything. So it might just be that I was imprecise with the baking of all of these cookies. I can't tell a real difference between the cookie that was refrigerated and the cookie that wasn't, other than the cookie that wasn't is a little bit darker, but that might be because it was just in the oven for longer. I think I like the I still think I like the cookie that was in the fridge for longer, because the most of the cookie part of the cookie is still really soft and good, but it's got a good kind of crispiness on the bottom. So it's still, most of it is still nice and soft. That being said, they're all really good cookies. I still think that I like to incorporate a lot of air into the butter and sugar and then also into the flour before I bake it, and that's what really leads to the cookies having this nice soft texture. If you prefer your cookies to be chewier versus kind of soft and fluffy, then what you would do is completely melt the butter so it's just totally liquidy, and not worry quite as much about incorporating air into it. But I like cakey cookies, so this is how I prefer them. I would absolutely send cookies to you if I could, but alas, there is no way to send cookies through the internet. There is a few minutes left on the last cookie in the oven, so before I sign off, are there any questions you would like me to answer, or is there anything you would like me to bake on stream next week? My next cooking stream is going to be on Saturday. I'll be making some creamy turkey soup. My next video game stream is going to be on Thursday, and I'll be starting a new playthrough of Fallout 4. Sometimes I do like shorter in between streams of like Fall Guys or something like that. I will will be doing another baking class stream next Tuesday. I have not yet decided what I will be baking that day. Yeah. 1 p.m. Eastern, I guess. I'm also going to be uploading this video to YouTube once I'm all done. Right now, it is almost 3 p.m. Oh, wow. I was going to say something. Yeah, the next baking stream will be going up at the same time next Tuesday. I haven't decided what I'll be baking yet, so I guess if you have any suggestions, you can yell it in the chat, or once I upload it to YouTube, you can comment on it. I will be uploading this video to YouTube once my stream is all done, and I will have the recipe for these cookies in the description of the video. So there's 10 seconds left on this cookie. I hope it's done because I don't want to have to reset the timer again. Yes. Okay, so this cookie is the thickness that I usually want my chocolate chip cookies to be, presumably because it was still pretty chill when I put it in the oven, versus all the other ones that kind of warmed up on the counter for a while. So this one's probably going to be extra cakey and extra soft, and that's usually what I want. Which, you know, obviously all these other cookies are also delicious. But I'm going to go ahead and get this guy off the pan. Okay. All right. So all the cookies are done. I need to let them cool. I need to let all of them cool off for a while. I really appreciate having you here to watch me bake. It was super fun to talk to you. I hope you #like and subscribe. And I also hope I get to talk to you again next week. So thank you for joining me, and I'll be uploading this to YouTube in just a little while. Have a good day. Bye. Did that work?